You're listening to the Loyalty Minute, the show that helps you build better customer loyalty and more valuable user engagement. With your host, Rob Gallo.
Welcome, loyal listeners, to another episode of the Loyalty Minute. I'm your host, Rob Gallo, and today I'm very eager and excited to chat with Ryan Condie. Ryan started 8 businesses. He bought 4, sold 2. He owns a lead generation software company and FBA business, and is the host of Let's Buy a Business podcast. In 2014, he started a candy factory from scratch, which can now be found at Sam's Club, Walgreens, and thousands of other stores. Ryan also spent 8 years in software sales at several tech unicorns, but his passion lies with online businesses and helping sellers achieve life-changing events through their business exits. Welcome to the show, Ryan. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
So I gave a little bit of background there, but for those who want to know more, let's hear, a minute or two about your background and how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, so I've done a little bit of everything, it seems like, and my 35 years on this planet, none of it really connects. So I've done everything from software sales to buying small businesses, starting small businesses. I started a candy factory seven years ago, and realized very quickly after about a year and a half, motivating 35 employees and doing quality assurance in a factory was not my skill set. So, and I've started a lot of companies too that were not very good, right? Which is kind of the nature of being an entrepreneur. So I've had a little bit of success and had a lot of fun throughout the process, and I have a super supportive wife, a few young kids, and wouldn't be able to do it without all them. So
good stuff. So, the show that we tailor around loyalty, customer loyalty, brand loyalty, why people buy, why people are avid users of certain brands and other ones they hate. So the first question that I ask most of my guests is, what does loyalty mean to you, Ryan, in terms of a consumer? How do you think about it when it comes to customer loyalty? And if you could answer in this form of a question, not a question, not Jeopardy, but in the form of like a story, something that would resonate with our listeners.
I would say, like, when it comes to me, and I think of me as a consumer, and I look around and I'm like, okay, what am I very loyal to? And there's a couple brands that, everybody probably says Apple, there's a couple other brands that I'm very passionate about. And one of them is called Nomadic, and they make backpacks. It's actually one of my friends' companies. They're pretty big, but they do these incredible backpacks that are just designed for travel. And I got one of these about a year ago, and I'd known the owner for a long time. And I don't know why it took me so long to get one, but it's the perfect travel backpack. When I think about that experience, I have used, dozens of backpacks for traveling, backpacking, just work bags, everything under the sun, and nothing has been this good. And so part of it is, I think when you think about loyalties, if you have a product or a service and there's just this wow factor, it can really, it just defies what you expect, right? And so that loyalty, a lot of it is setting expectations. And so if I go buy something crappy from, some cheap backpack, like, I understand what I'm going to get into, right? And this is they're expensive backpacks, and then your expectations are pretty high, but when they're exceeded, it really means a lot. There was a long time ago, I was traveling in Hawaii, and we were on the way to the airport to actually fly home, and our car got broken into. So you don't want to leave any valuables in a car parked at the beach. And I had a bunch of stuff stolen, and I had my this is the second brand I was going to talk about, is Lululemon. I had my everyday pants, or ABC pants. I can't remember what it's called. ABC pants from Lululemon in my backpack so that I could change into it for the flight. We were an hour away from flying out. And I remember I got my computer stolen. I got my journal stolen. I got my passports, all sorts of random stuff that were in my backpack that got stolen. This is before my Nomadic backpack. And I was most sad about my Lululemon pants, right? So, and I think about loyalty, it's exceeding expectations.
And I'm assuming it means you believing in the brand in and of itself because of what it means to you emotionally, right?
Yeah.
You have an emotional connection to the products and the brands and the services that you touch. And, obviously you don't want to lose your computer, but that's, losing a pair of pants and getting more upset about that is quite interesting.
Yeah. My wife thought I was silly, but I was more upset on my $100 pants than I was, $1,000 plus computer. So.
All right. So you come in contact with a lot of other business owners, right? And I know they're mainly small businesses, but they have to think about loyalty too. Obviously, it's 6 times more cost effective to keep an existing customer than to go out and get a new one, right? So when you're thinking about, I know you're doing a lot of stuff on the sales side, but for the businesses that you look for to make acquisitions of, how do you think about what that brand is doing for their customers and how they can continue to or improve on their loyalty? Do you look at that when you look at acquiring a business?
Yeah, 100%. And there's a couple of things that I would do. And this is more on the acquisition side of things. If I was looking to acquire a company or sell a company or whatever, right? Um, a couple tips, and the main one is just look at their support emails coming in, right? How do they handle those? Are they getting the same questions over and over again, and they have for years but haven't fixed it, right? So those are the main things that you look at is where are the customer support emails coming in. If they have a lot of employees and they're bigger, you can look at Glassdoor. If they're smaller, you look at their Google reviews, and employees will post reviews on there. And so I know you can't trust all the reviews online, but what you're trying to look for are these anecdotal points within this journey of a particular business, right? You order a product without telling anybody just so that it arrives, and you don't tell the owner. You don't want anything special. You just want to know, hey, what does this look like for the average consumer? Those are all kind of tactics that I would do when I think about acquiring a company. Now, based on the business model, right? If it's a SaaS company, you're looking at churn, and churn is how long someone's going to be with you, right? Or how fast someone is canceling your service. So if your churn is at 2% month over month, that's actually 2 times 12. It's 24% a year. So 1/4 of your customers every year are actually leaving. And so it could be a nature of customer service. It could be, they've already used your product and they don't need it anymore. But a lot of it's going to be in context of the actual business model. If it's part of a, consumable brand, such as like a hair product or, food, or, I just had some snacks here that I ate. That's, you think about the subscriber, or, if people are on kind of automatic reorder, the recurring revenue portion, and like you said, it costs a lot of money to acquire that customer first, but the multiples on companies that have recurring revenue or recurring software revenue or recurring inventory revenue, where people are reordering and rebuying and using up that product, it's huge. The multiples are so much higher because you don't have to go reacquire those customers again. So there's a couple different data points that you can look at, whether it's in your own business or whether it's looking for a business that you're looking to acquire.
Yeah, well, I don't want to switch gears too much, but as we discussed before we even hit the record button, I'm in the process of acquiring another business right now, and the churn is high, but the business that it services, the churn is even higher, which is an issue. But the company's been growing for the last 10 years steadily every single year. So it's kind of an anomaly, and maybe we'll take this offline later. I know you have a hard stop at the top of the hour. But anyway, getting back on point, you mentioned some of the things that you might look into when you're making an acquisition of a business are going to be how the interaction with the customers comes about. So a lot of our listeners are small business entrepreneurs, small business owners, probably some medium-sized companies too, and they're thinking about, what can I do to increase my loyalty? So what is some of the things that Ryan Condie would do post-acquisition to increase customer retention and loyalty?
That's a great question. And first, I hopefully know where the issues are beforehand, right? Because if you don't know the issues beforehand, you can get into some deep water really quickly, and you don't know what issues you might have in the business. And of course, I've made those mistakes and still continue to make those mistakes because you can't know everything. The other side of it is too, if you know these problems in advance, I started trying to solve them beforehand. So I looked at a company a couple of years ago, and it had a couple issues within the company, and it wasn't necessarily towards loyalty, but just in terms of who their suppliers were. And so while looking at that company before I actually bought it, I actually tried to see if I could fix some of the problems. And I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't call people up and tell them I was from so-and-so company when I wasn't, or anything. But I actually made a bunch of calls to different suppliers to see if they could fix certain areas within this business I was looking at acquiring. And I couldn't actually fix the problem, I didn't think. And if I couldn't fix the problem before taking over the company, then I probably couldn't fix it after, right? So it's one of those things. First, before you take over, you want to make sure you can identify any of those chokeholds, customer loyalty issues that you could run into. And naturally, there's going to be some that pop up that you haven't thought about. So once you do that, I think sometimes when people take over a company, they want to change things left and right. A lot of times unless it's a turnaround project, you're not trying to, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? So when you get in, you're kind of just waiting for things and letting things kind of pass by, making sure things are running well, partly because you don't want to just go in and rip stuff out and this is for a company that's going well, right? And just start breaking stuff. So part of it is you're understanding what the actual flow is, where the choke points are, where the customer service issues could be. Okay. And when we think about loyalty of that customer, I would say one example that I've done is when we took over a brand. I had a partner and we took over a brand, and what I realized very quickly is they had some maybe 5% defect rate. Well, a 5% defect rate on their products and their zippers is really high. Like that's pretty high.
Yeah.
Enough to the point where if you have like a 1 or 2, that's pretty normal. 5 is pretty high, almost to the extent you don't know what the actual true defect rate is. So we ended up having a lot of inventory that we thought had bad zippers, and it was too late to go back to the seller, and it just we had to move on, right? So one of the things we had to do is we said, okay, if we're going to run this company for a long time, and we believe in this, and we're offering and moving forward with this, is we ended up doing 2 things, right? So we were very clear and upfront with our customers that we may have had an issue with a small amount of our bags. If they had any issues, no questions asked, we replaced it. We replaced it either monetarily, gave them a full refund, or we just gave them a new bag, no questions asked. Okay, so that kind of solved that problem. Mm-hmm. And then moving forward, we had to take immediate steps so that we made sure we had a zipper that was working on this certain part of a bag. But I would say that's like the most concrete example. And part of those is you don't know those, Rob, before you get in, and all of a sudden you roll up your sleeves and you're like, oh, what did I just do?
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to backpedal when, you have, and again, this might be getting off the loyalty tangent, but hopefully our listeners can appreciate it. When you think about things like that may be off the beaten path, and you have rose-colored glasses on because you really want this business, and you're like, this is a great business, the model works, but there are a couple of flaws and a couple of issues that are going to need to be addressed, and you can't get them solved in advance. What's your position there? What do you think?
Yeah, and it really depends on how attractive and how badly you want that business. So every time you run a business, start a business, acquire a business, join a business, there's always risk associated with it, right? In the acquisition space, there's risk for the buyer and there's risk for the seller. And a deal can happen when you have the risk profiles meet each other and they work, right? You can have 100% risk on the buyer and 100% risk on the seller based on the business and the structure and all those things, right? So, you have to be, and time again, I see people when they, I don't want this to be too much about acquisitions, but when you do look for a company to acquire, don't fall in love with the deal. You can't fall in love with the business, because not every business deal should work, and not every deal should work out. And if it did, the world would just kind of be out of whack. So part of it needs to be that these deals don't work, and that's okay. And you move on to the next one, which might be a better fit for you anyway. So it's okay to walk away. And for the businesses that I bought, I've walked away from 2 to 3 times more than that, maybe even 5 times more than that, right? And so part of it is, if you can't solve the problem, not necessarily before, you don't have the right skill sets or the right connections, maybe that's not the right business for you. And that's totally okay, because someone else will come along who will have those skill sets or those connections to solve those problems.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So in getting back to loyalty, so just from your own consumer standpoint, what do you think the future loyalty looks like? I mean, obviously we started way back in the day with punch cards, you buy 10, get 1 free or things like that. And now it was swipe cards every time you come in. And now, there's like coalition loyalty programs. What does loyalty look like in the future to you as a consumer? What sort of things do you think companies could do to make you more loyal?
Well, I just flew for a vacation, and I had to spend 2.5 hours on the phone with an airline. I won't name the airline, but I would say that's the first step, is answer your phones, or make your business so that basic things that need to happen you don't need to talk to someone. Putting an infant in arms on a flight, that should just be something I can click on the app on my phone, right? Rather than have to actually talk to someone to put that information in. They know I have an infant in arms from the last times that I flew, right? I'm not making this up. So I would say that in terms of like where the future of loyalty can go, I do see, and I don't know, maybe this is answering your question in a roundabout way, or maybe it's not answering it entirely at all, but I actually see just the economy going in a way where so many more things are going the Netflix model, where it's a subscription. And so I think the companies who are going to do well, maybe 10 years, 20 years from now, we'll have self-driving cars or whatever, right? This is way above my pay grade in terms of talking about that time frame. But when you think about that, you obviously don't need your car that's sitting out in front of your house most of the time idle. So, you could just rent a car, and I think it'll be turned into more of a Netflix model, and whoever can have the best experience, the user experience, the easiest experience, the UX for that experience also buttoned up, that will allow them to basically win. And I would imagine over the next 10 to 15, 20 years, most of what we'll be doing is actually, sort of renting or having the Netflix model, and you subscribe to different things, and you don't necessarily own nearly as much. So ownership isn't going to go away entirely, but I think that's where I think loyalty could go.
Yeah. I don't want to get on a huge tangent, but how do you feel about blockchain technology? Are you familiar with it?
Only enough to sound really smart to my mom.
Well, I'm
highly unqualified for that too. I think it's fascinating. I don't know much more about it. I'm definitely not the source for crypto.
Well, not cryptocurrency itself, but I'm an investor in I don't want to call them startups. They're pretty well established brands in the blockchain technology space. It's fascinating. And when you talk about futuristic things, and you talked about ownership, right? So basically, it's the validation of ownership of anything through smart contracts. That's the concept of what the blockchain, the underlying technology of what Bitcoin is built on and Ethereum is built on, is the technology that allows the validation through a decentralized locations, meaning it's not some authority saying this person owns this piece of property. It's everyone saying this person owns this piece of property because it's on a distributed ledger that everyone has access to, which everyone has to validate, or several people validate, in order to make sure that it's accurate. Again, I know this is a huge tangent. I know you have a hard stop in about 5 minutes, but I think we did a pretty good job talking about some futuristic stuff. Let me ask you one more question before we wrap this up. What sort of actionable advice could you give to an existing business owner right now that they could do, other than what you mentioned about the airline making it more easy to connect with people, right? Which is obvious. It sounds so obvious, right? But what sort of things could people do right now that they can improve or attract and retain more customers?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I'll give a little bit of a broad answer that could be applied to any industry. And so one of the things I don't see enough of is going where your customers already are, or finding someone who's already selling to your customers and working with them. Mm-hmm. On the online marketing side of things, it's called affiliate. It's called affiliate marketing, right? But take what's working online and take it offline. And some companies have done this, and this isn't earth shattering. It just not very many people are doing that very much. So here's an example. You have a home services company, right? And they paint houses, or they fix roofs, or they mow the lawn, right? It doesn't matter. What happens is they're selling to the end customer. They're selling to homeowners. So figure out who else is selling to homeowners but doesn't actually compete with you. So what I would do if I owned a painting business is I'd go find all the roofers and send them business and have them send me business. I'd go find all the pest control people and send them business, and I'd have them send me business. And so part of it is I think not enough people are actually focused on areas where customers already have loyalty with someone. Like, oh, this guy came and painted my house. I had a great experience. I already have trust with him. But if he's like, oh yeah, by the way, hey, I noticed some bugs over here when I was doing this. I have a great guy who would, do pest control, and, turn around the pest control guys. Hey, I know you got some chipped paint over here. I've got a great painter who can come in and help you fix that. I don't think enough people do that. And it could be based on an affiliate, right? Or it could just be based on you scratch my back, I scratch yours. And I can't tell you how many service oriented, companies just don't ask me questions. And, if my pest control guy asked me for a referral, I didn't introduce him to my 6 neighbors right here. And then all of a sudden he'd have 6 houses to do, 7 houses, including mine, to do right now in one trip. So I think a lot of it is go where your customers are and figure out who's already selling to your customers, who's built up trust, but doesn't compete with you.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that concept. I mean, and back in the day in the casino business, we built an affiliate platform that had 5,000 affiliates. I mean, of which realistically 600 were doing anything. And of that, top 50 were doing, 80% of the business. But nonetheless, it gets the brand out there, but it creates that sort of word of mouth snowball effect where people, like you said, they trust this guy already in the fact that he's spraying your lawn. Now he's recommending somebody for painting, and you already like the guy. Yeah, that works. Well, listen, I know we could talk about this forever, and we could go out on a million tangents, but I want to be respectful of your time and our listeners' times. So I want to thank you for joining me today, Ryan. I want to thank our loyal listeners for investing some of their valuable time with us. If you feel you received some value for the show, we would definitely appreciate a 5-star review on your favorite podcast streaming service. And as Ryan mentioned, if you know someone as a referral that you might think could benefit from listening to the program, please do share. This is how we grow the podcast. So to reference this and other Loyalty Minute episodes, please visit theloyaltyminute.com. Enjoy. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for your next edition of the Loyalty Minute.